Romance number 28 on June 1950 for one issue. Fiction House followed at the same time. One notable story was I Was a Lady Bandit in Marvel's Western Life Romances number 2 on March of 1950 about Belle Chance, who becomes a costume bandit vixen to fight criminals that murdered her father. She eventually falls for the local sheriffs and kills her former lover. Ace's Western Love Trails number 7 on November 1949 featured Sarah Shaw, who lets her boyfriend become sheriff so they can marry. Tangled Love and Frontier Romances number 1 on December 1950 from Avon would be cited by Frederick Warburton as he featured an image of a man spanking a woman. Ultimately, the Western romance subgenre would die with the love glut as sales dropped in the 1950s with the baby boom. St. John's introduced a new subgenre, war romance, with wartime romance in July of 1951, time of the outbreak of the Korean War. Quality also did true war romances on the September 1952 and GI Sweethearts number 32 on June of 1953. Superior did GI War Brides in June of 1954 as well. However, this would be another subgenre that would quickly fade after the end of the Korean War. By 1951, there were 18 new titles, with the romance peaking in 1952 with 552 titles before falling to 432 in 1953. Fawcett and Ziff Davis would leave the genre altogether when they canceled their 82 titles, and by 1955 the number had dropped to just 347 after the publication of Frederick Warburton's Seduction of the Innocent. By 1959, the number of romance titles had dropped to 160. Quality also left the genre in 1956, canceling 64 titles as did Ace, Gleason, and Superior. Marvel shrank its number in the romance titles, having to deal with its 8 books a month mandate from its distributor, Independent News, while St. John left the genre altogether in 1955, followed by Harvey in 1958, while Ajax Farrell quit comics altogether in 1958 as well. One of the few comic books Marvel still published in the romance genre was Girl Comics from 1948 to 1952, and is noted for having a photo cover of the issue number 3 of a young Elizabeth Taylor, then 17 years old at the time. It was really a mix of romance and adventure, and by issue number 13 had become Girl Confessions, where girls made into superheroes. Marvel also did True Secrets in 1949 and its first monthly romance comic, Love Tales, in 1952. Ultimately, Marvel would produce 185 titles from 1951 to 54. Fawcett's final romantic comic book was Romance Stories number 22 in 1953, though the series would be picked up by Charlton, as it did with many other books. It should be noted by only 1/3 of all romance titles from 1947 to 1977 made it past a dozen issues, leading to 301 distinct titles being made. Of these, only 15 made it past 100 issues, such as Young Love, with many distributors favoring quantity over quality. There were a few gems, though, such as Daring Love number 1 by being Steve Ditko's first published work, while Toby published Sorority Secrets 1954, though the publisher would be defunct by the next year. Charlton would reprint Negro Romances number 4, which was first published by Fawcett in 1950. It would later become Romantic Secrets in edition number 5, which was actually another title that Charlton had acquired from Fawcett as well. Meanwhile, the creators of the romance genre, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, were trying to create a new publication company with Mainline, and as part of their comic book lineup, published In Love in 1954. However, the book would be discontinued when the company failed within a year. Charlton picked it up and changed it to In Love With You, edition number 5 on May of 1955, and made the last comic book to carry an adults-only tag with its racy Bride of the Star story, a baseball romance. Lovely Heart was published on March 1951 with the notorious bondage splash page in the story, So This Is Love, which would later be a target of Frederick Warburton and his fellow comic critics. Mr. Anthony's Love Clinic came out on November of 1949. It was Dr. Laura of her era, with issue number 1 listing his 10 rules for marriage happiness, with long-winded answers dealing with spiritual guidance, attractiveness, and so forth. Issue number 2 gave further advice on compromise and money with the story I Know What's Best for My Sister. Romantic Hearts number 9 was published in November 1954 with the cover of 2 women fighting over a man. Published by Master Comics, it was a kind of cover that would soon be censored by the Comics Code Authority, CCA, which would go into effect next year. As a result, by issue number 12, the woman's clothing was sanitized, i.e. no more cleavage, while the CCA in general restricted dresses for women and forbid divorce. As an example was Skin Deep, from the comic book Diary Confessions number 12 in November 1955, which was a reprint from the story Ugly from Tender Romances number 2 on February 1950, about a homely girl who falls in love with a blind man. The reprint removed the lines, "that beast" and "fires of passion," as these were now deemed not eligible for young readers due to the CCA's guidelines. Another tragedy for the romance genre due to the CCA was the work of the great Frank Frazetta on Personal Love number 24 and 25, and 27 and 28, and number 32, At Eastern, from 1953 to 1955, and of course was natural for the romance genre, as he, like Matt Baker, was brilliant at depicting beautiful women. However, the CCA made reprints of many old stories impossible, as they would pass the new stricter guidelines even with edits. In fact, even advertisements were restricted. A perfect example of the changes was the CCA was the third book Crestwood launched to go with Young Romance and Young Love, Young Brides, which launched in 1952. That title, before the CCA, featured stories like Teenage Mother, Wait for the Doctor, and Under 21, edition number 19 on November and December of 1954, and even featured a couple having a passionate kiss on the beach. However, by issue number 22, the cover was a wife knitting socks for her husband, and the last issue, number 30, in November and December 1956, featured a couple having a chaste kiss in front of a stroller with twin babies, while an elderly couple looked on in approval. Before the CCA, such images of domestic bliss wouldn't even have made it, as it wouldn't have appealed to young readers, but with it in full effect, it was the only thing comics could get away with. Charlton originally entered the romance genre with True Life Secrets in April of 1951 and took advantage of other publishers disappearing, picking up many of their old books. The company would produce 1,420 titles but only 254 by 1960, with many of them in the bland 68-page comic books that carried 12 stories apiece. Crestwood, meanwhile, sold the original romance comic book Young Romance and Young Love to National in 1963, which also published High School Confidential Diary on June of 1960 and Summer Love number 46 on October 1965, which featured the Beatles on the cover, though they had nothing to do with the story inside. As for Crestwood Prize Publications, the company that launched the romance comic book genre, it would be defunct by 1968, publishing only humor books like Sick until it finally went under. Charlton was soon dominating the romance genre that was left over, with 1,140 titles from 1960 to 1976, with the closest competitor being DC with 668 titles, while Marvel only produced 117. The romance genre was still in the downturn, comprising only 8% of the comic book titles in America in the 1960s, but had fallen to 4% by the 1970s. One area the genre was taken advantage of was the doctor shows on TV at the time, with series like Career Girl Romance, which ran 65 issues. Marvel tried Millie the Model, Patsy Walker, and Night Nurse, which Stan Lee worked on, and Don Buscema, Don Heck, and Gene Colan and John Ramirez Sr. provided the art for. They even reprinted old issues of My Love and Our Love Story with Jim Sternenko, even working on Our Love number 5 on June of 1970, which would later be reprinted in issue number 23 on May of 1973. However, the writing was on the wall, and soon Marvel replaced their numerous books with the superhero genres, such as teenage romance, which was replaced by the Incredible Hulk. DC still made a try at the romance genre, such as long-running Secret Hearts from 1952 to 1971, and even produced 50 separate titles in 1965, which also produced girls' love stories, girl romance, and darker love, although artists like Romita Sr. would later state they hated working on the comic books for their blandness. April O'Day appeared in Girls' Love number 104 in July of 1964, and Joe Simon returned to edit Young Love with issue number 106 in October and November of 1973. Sticking with the times, hippies appeared in the Girls' Romances on number 135 in September 1968, but the genre was still dying when Secret Hearts was canceled by issue number 153 on July of 1971. Soon it would only just be the original titles Young Romance and Young Love, though they would soon be canceled as well. For many, the previous year, 1973, was considered the end of the romance genre in comic books, as by 1974 only 45 titles were being published, though it went up to 82 in 75 and then 53 by 76. However, over that 3 years, romance titles comprised only 180 titles out of 5,500 comic books that were being produced. Young Romance would end with issue number 208 on November-December of 1975, while Young Love would end in July of 1977 with issue number 126. DC would try one last time with Secret House of Sinister Love and Dark Mansion of Forbidden Love as a cross-genre with horror. However, this would soon be canceled, representing the last major effort of the romance genre in comic books. Ultimately, as Charlton and DC artist Dick Giordano would state, it was the CCA that killed the romance genre, as it did many other genres in comic books for decades. As the tame stories couldn't appeal to young readers that first bought them in. It was all hand-holding and crushing the local football star, and nothing the real readers could relate to. Romance comics still would appear overseas as well, particularly in Europe and Asia. One notable example in the manga market is the light novel genre, which is stories aimed at middle and high school students, essentially the equivalent of young adult in America. While like the rest of manga, several different genres operate inside this medium, with both teenage humor and romance being among them. One notable recent series that combines both those genres was Toradora, a 10-volume series released from March 10th, 2006 to March 10th of 2009, about two high school students and neighbors, Riju Takasha and Taga Esaki, who initially hate each other before they realize they are best friends with their respective crushes. Soon, Riju and Taja decide to team up to win over their respective crushes. It doesn't take a genius to see where this story is going, but like any great story, it's the journey and not the destination that's important. With writer Yukoa Tikomiya and artist Yusa crafting a hilarious and heartwarming tale of high school romance. The series sold 3 million books in Japan and remains one of the most popular of the light novel genre in recent years. Of course, an anime adaptation was produced in 2009 to equal success and acclaim. Back in America, like many of the other genres, such as horror and crime, that were buried due to the CCA, romance has started to make a resurgence. Arrow Publications produced a series called My Romance Stories, while Dark Horse launched a series of manga-style Harlequin novels. Perhaps the most notable revival of the romance comics in recent years, though, has been Terry Moore's Strangers in Paradise, that took a new twist in the love triangle story between the main characters Francine, Kachu, and David, where Francine is considered Kachu her best friend, David is in love with Kachu, but Kachu is in love with Francine. Like many modern comics, while it was originally romance, it soon crossed over into crime genre with Kachu's past with a local mob being revealed. The first issue appeared on January 1st, 1993 in Antarctic Press, with the series bouncing to Abstract for the second volume, and then Image, and then back to Abstract for its third and final volume, concluding with issue number 90 in 2007, though Terry Moore did announce he would do a follow-up novel at the 2012 San Diego Comic Book Convention. The highly acclaimed series won the Eisner for Best Serialized Story in 1996, along with the National Cartoonist Society Reuben Award for Best Comic Book in 2003. Also, because the comic's realistic depiction of gay relationships, it received the GLAAD Award for the Best Comic Book in 2001. Of course, such a comic book couldn't exist at the height of the CCA. While it was technically still in existence during its run, Stranger in Paradise avoided it by being published independently, along with the fact that the CCA was completely ineffectual at this point. Even classic series returned briefly with DC when they produced Young Romance, the new 52 Valentine's Day special on number 1 in 2013, while doing a special reprint of Young Love and Showcase Presents Young Love Volume 1 in 2012. However, the genre has yet to reclaim its place as one of the most significant in the comic book medium, but romance still plays a part in the regular books. Considering the soap opera nature of many of the current comic book stories, including superheroes, romance is a natural subplot. Most recently, Marvel launched Mr. and Mrs. X last year, which stars the longtime lovers Rogue and Gambit, who finally got married in X-Men Gold number 30, which was originally supposed to be the marriage of Shadowcat and Colossus before she backed out at the last minute. Spoilers, you haven't read it, but it's been like a year or two. Come on, people. And of course, in the recent Fantastic Four number 5, Ben Grimm, the Thing, finally married his longtime love, Elisa Masters. So, like a great songwriter once said, the world always needs love, and so does comic books. And now that the hated CCA is now dead and gone, we will hopefully see its resurgence like the rest of the comic book genres. I would like to thank my main source for this episode, Love on the Racks, A History of Romance Comics by Michael Nolan, a great history of the romance genre comics. Please pick it up wherever books are sold. And now is February 14th, 2019. Time for some reviews. Well, first off, should do a quick explanation. As you know, last week I said I'll be starting a two-parter on the history of crime comic books. But considering the day is Valentine's Day and I already had this episode in the bank, I figured let's go ahead and do the history of romance comics instead. And with that, I hope everyone had a nice Valentine's Day and enjoyed life and enjoyed it with your loved ones. Now, on to the favorite comic book of the week, Criminal, number 2, by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, which takes a detour from the story from the first issue as we get into the life of Hal Crane, a fictional comic book artist who has his career gone AWOL since he's due to his obnoxious personality. However, when he discovers that his original art is now out there somewhere, he decides to go seek it out and decides to cross that line. Ed Brubaker once again crafts another fun criminal story, this time actually referencing the Golden Age artists at the time, many who were actually upset about their original art being stolen from them. It would do a lot of things to get them back. While Sean Phillips' art, granted it's in the more comic book creator setting, isn't quite as nourish, but still has some nice moments, it's particularly Crane's encounter in a bathroom. Overall, this looks to be another great return